So I keep seeing this stat everywhere that each time you use ChatGPT, it's the equivalent to consuming an entire bottle of water. And people share this fact online like they're catching one another committing war crimes. And it never quite sat right with me. It didn't seem true. And yet I'd be sitting there asking Claude to help me organize my thoughts. And in the back of my mind, I'm wondering, like, is this worth a bottle of water? Am I a bad person right now? So I decided to look into it. I talked to Dr. Karen Boyd, who's an AI ethics consultant, and she walked me through what the research actually says. It's not a bottle of water per query. The estimates range wildly, anywhere from 10 to 300 queries per bottle of water, depending on where the data center is, how it's being cooled, and whether you're counting the water used for electricity generation. But it's absolutely not one query per bottle. That's a misreading of the research that got turned into a meme. And look, I'm not saying that AI has zero environmental impact. It does. Data centers use a lot of water and electricity, they take up a lot of space, and they have very real impact on the communities around them. That's all real, and we should talk about it. But can we talk about it honestly? Because right now the conversation is so weirdly selective. You know what uses way more energy than AI? Netflix, Hulu, ironically, YouTube. 1 hour of streaming a show produces about the same amount of carbon emissions as 1,000 ChatGPT queries. 1,000. And in terms of total energy footprint, Netflix uses roughly 40 times more energy than ChatGPT. And yet, have you ever, even once, seen someone guilt trip someone else online about how much energy Netflix uses? Has anyone ever said, I was going to binge that new show, but I just can't justify the environmental cost?
I would love to watch you do rivalry, but the carbon emissions.
The environment is not the reason that we feel guilty for hitting continue watching at 1 a.m. for the 4th episode in a row when we should be sleeping. But if you admit that you used AI to help you come up with a recipe, suddenly you are personally responsible for draining the Colorado River. And I think we need to ask ourselves why that is. Why are we so selectively outraged about AI? And I think part of it is that AI is new and it feels threatening in ways that Netflix doesn't. And so when we hear that it uses water, it's like, great, one more reason to hate it. It confirms a feeling that we already have. But that's not critical thinking. That's not intellectual honesty. That's not a good faith argument. That's confirmation bias with an environmental sticker slapped across the front of it. So let's be clear about what is worth being concerned about, because there are real environmental issues here, and they're mostly not about individual queries. First off, the vast majority of AI's water and energy use comes from training the models, not from me and you using them. So these companies' obsession with taking it to the next level and expanding the capacity and outperforming each other, and we have to beat China, and this company has to be better than this company. That's what's driving all of this. It's all of the training data and the producing of new models. So when people say stop using AI so that we can save water, that's like telling someone to take shorter showers while the golf course down the street is running sprinklers 24/7. The individual use is a tiny fraction of the total impact. Second, there's a real environmental justice issue that we should be angry about, and that's around where the data centers get built. They go into areas that don't have the infrastructure for them, and suddenly local residents are paying higher utility bills because this massive water and electricity consumer just showed up in their town, and they had no say in it. Third, there's the rare earth mineral mining that goes into building all of these servers. And that's happening mostly overseas, in conditions that are genuinely terrible for the workers and for the surrounding ecosystems. And the fourth real concern is that the backup generators at these data centers run on fossil fuels, and they cause pollution for the people living near them. So in places like Northern Virginia, in Dallas, Phoenix, Chicago, those places are really feeling it. So AI is genuinely problematic on an environmental level, not to mention all of the other concerns. But we keep putting it back down to an individual level. Everything that I just shared here is actually systemic. They're about corporate decisions and government regulation and where we source energy and who is bearing the cost of all of this infrastructure. It's not about whether you personally should feel bad for asking AI a question and stop using it. And that's a pattern that I keep seeing where we take these systemic problems, these structural institutional issues and we turn them into individual guilt. We did it with recycling, right? The fossil fuel industry spent decades convincing us that climate change was hinging on our personal choices about whether we remembered to bring reusable bags to the grocery store, whether we opted out of using plastic straws. And meanwhile, they were pumping billions of tons of carbon into the atmosphere. And we fell for it. And we're doing the same thing right now with AI. We're making it about these individual actions and these purity tests about cutting AI out of our online lives, which is almost impossible at this point, instead of focusing on the decision makers that are having the real impact. Now, an important caveat here. AI's footprint is currently small compared to streaming services, but it's growing fast. And some projections have global AI water demand hitting over 1 trillion gallons by 2027. That trajectory matters, and we should be paying attention to it. But companies are pouring billions into building massive data centers right now. And meanwhile, the models themselves keep getting more efficient. So there's this real possibility that we're racing to build all this infrastructure based on projections that assume the technology stays as energy hungry as it is today, when the entire incentive structure of these companies is to make it cheaper and leaner to run. That's how they make money. So efficiency is not some altruistic goal for them. We don't have to hope that they will suddenly start caring about the environment more than profits. It's all tied up together. Efficiency is the business model. So we could end up with a whole bunch of data centers that were built for a problem that got engineered away. I would rather us focus on that. It's a very different conversation from chastising each other by saying your ChatGPT query is boiling the ocean. So if you genuinely care about the environmental impact of AI, and I do, and I hope that you do too, here is what actually matters. We need to push for data centers to use renewable energy. We need to advocate for local regulations that protect communities where data centers are built. And if you are part of a company or an organization that is partnering with AI tools, pressure them. Ask them what their energy sourcing is like. Tell them we're not signing this big contract to give you our business unless we know that you are actively taking steps to reduce your carbon footprint. The money is where we have leverage, and that's where change happens, but we need to be looking at it on a structural level. And if you want to, in the meantime, post about the impact of technology on the environment, go for it. But maybe include streaming services in that, and Spotify, and every video call that you've ever been on, and your smart TV, and cloud storage, because that all runs on the same data centers. Or we can just keep feeling guilty and shaming each other about using AI to draft an email.
But Angela, every time we use AI, we're telling these companies there's a demand for more. We are the justification for the next data center.
I struggle with that too. And I asked Dr. Karen Boyd about it. And it was still possible in 2023 to be a conscientious objector. Be like, I'm not using this. Now it's in literally everything. I open up Instagram and it's wanting me to, I can't just do a regular search. It's an AI assisted search. You know, the search engines are all included, like every single time. I mean, I was trying to pay a water bill for the house the other day and there was an AI assistant and I'm just like, I don't know if it's possible to even use the internet anymore without using AI. So is it reasonable for an individual to decide they do not want to use AI? What would that look like when it's embedded in basically every single online tool and app now? And so much of our lives are online.
Just like you, I would love to validate, like, the desire to abstain is so reasonable. Whether it is possible, I do think is a different question. I think that one point to make here is that generative AI isn't the only type of AI. We've been using AI in all kinds of things for a long time. When you go online shopping, they're not presenting the socks to you in alphabetical order or in like the order where they were like chronological order. They're using a recommender system to say people with similar shopping patterns to this person preferred these socks. So I'm going to put those first because that's our best shot at selling socks to them. Not because they care that much about your socks, frankly. So could you drive to the store and purchase socks instead to avoid AI? Well, not in my car. I just got a new to me 2017 car and it has lane assist and automatic parking, which scares me. I don't do that. I'm not ready for that yet. But you know, and the like smart cruise control and the warnings before you're going to run into stuff. That's all AI driven stuff for the most part. And similarly, your email, if you're using any popular email system, it has a junk filter. It used to be those junk filters were looking for strings of text like Nigerian prince and throwing out those strings. When they developed a classifier for junk mail, it got way better. So could you avoid that by sending a physical letter to someone? You cannot. The United States Postal Service is one of the oldest adopters of AI. They used it to identify what the zip code is to automatically sort the mail. So it would be very hard to completely avoid using all AI. I will say there are ethical concerns with all of those, with recommender systems, classifiers, clustering algorithms, depending on how they are used. We've got the uses in policing, which are terrifying. So what I'm not saying is generative AI is worse, just that it is different and new and sudden, right? So it would be very difficult to avoid all AI. It would be pretty difficult to avoid generative AI. It's a little easier at the moment. You can like log out of Instagram and LinkedIn, and you can turn off the thing in Word, and you've got to do some work to avoid it, but it would be possible. The risk is that if productivity expectations in school and work and the rest of our lives expand to assume that we are using generative AI to take some of that labor off of our plates, that we will then start falling behind.
What's a helpful framework to think about your own personal philosophy towards this, and when you want to use it and when you don't?
The first thing I would say is that whether you use it or you don't use it, someone out there is going to judge you about it, right? Someone's going to be like, you're leaving all this productivity on the table. I can't believe you're not using all the resources that you're just... And there's also going to be people who are like, if you're using AI, it means you're bad at your job and a bad person, right? So you're not going to please everyone. My encouragement would be to learn enough about the technology, how it works, and think enough about your own personal ethics as how they apply to the technology so you can at least please yourself. That would be my first step there. And I also want to encourage people to not think about it as a tug of war between productivity and ethics. It's not a zero-sum game where in order to get productivity, I have to make a sacrifice on ethics. Think about it more as like a Cartesian coordinate plane, right? There's two factors here, productivity and ethics, and there's a way to do both of them worse. There's also a way to do both of them better. And so looking for ways to, and in your own life and in an organization, practices and policies that encourage like a values-driven AI culture. I think for sustainability and AI, and actually all AI ethics, I would encourage people to remember that it is complicated. Reasonable people can disagree. It's not black and white, but it's a lot more interesting than that.
I'll drop the links to all the research in the description if you want to go down this rabbit hole yourself. But I'm curious where you land on this. Have you changed your AI use because of environmental concerns, or does this feel like misplaced guilt? Tell me in the comments.